This morning, we asked the Deputy Director of Development and Housing to come out and chat with us about potential locations for the wrap-up event. And that enhances the professionalism aspect of the senior level courses as well. When you're standing in City Hall talking with the Deputy Director or the Director or the Mayor, it creates a different kind of experience, and one that perhaps sticks with the students longer and means more to them than sort of a theoretical textbook kind of activity. There is funding for these course enhancements, again, because the partner has some skin in the game. We can use some of that budget to support field trips. We had a class last semester that purchased t-shirts so that they could celebrate Recyclers of the Week in their community. So there is that funding that otherwise sometimes the courses don't have access to. Communication with students, faculty. There's, again, this ongoing contact with folks in the partnership. We have a kickoff event that we held a month ago or so now to celebrate the partnership. We will have a wrap-up event to celebrate all that is done. That'll take place in April. And I've been in the classroom a number of times doing presentations about the EPIC model and trying to help students understand how their project fits within the larger scheme, and other sorts of chances that I have to communicate and engage with students in the project. I already mentioned the idea that the city has skin in the game. It is a whole university approach. It's not a single class service learning opportunity, but it's something that a number of folks on the campus can get involved with. And then the university also becomes a more prominent member of the community. SIUE has not been in Alton as much as perhaps they would like for us to have been. But now they're coming to see us as a partner, as someone that they can call on if something happens and they need some input, some support, maybe some collaboration on a grant or something like that. So we're becoming a neighbor more than the university down the road. So some of these I've already mentioned. EPIC is different from other service learning and specialty types of projects on campuses. It is a larger scale project. It's multidisciplinary. We're working with students in 3 different colleges. That includes the Engineering College, College of Arts and Sciences, Health and Human Behavior, I think. I'm forgetting some of them. But students across a number of disciplines. Business, certainly. Business, there are 3 classes in the business program part of it. So you get these different disciplines, again, engaged in project work with your partner. It is an opt-in option, so I'm not out trying to twist arms. Right? We probably don't want faculty who need to have their arm twisted to be part of the model anyways. So I'm looking for faculty who are either ready to get involved with community engagement types of projects or already doing this kind of work. And those folks, those who are already doing service learning, are very thankful for us to just deliver a partner. Say, hey, here's the partner, here's a project, what do you think? Because historically, right, the faculty members had to go and create that relationship, come up with that project, and work all that out on their own. And so now our faculty are thankful for that support that the program offers them. It's not new curricula. Some faculty are modifying their curriculum to better fit with what the project is, but that's all optional, and that's up to the faculty member to do that. Again, these are community identified projects. We don't have the permission systems that at the university that the partner might have with going through council meetings and getting approval, official bureaucratic approvals for new projects or things. We've talked about the fee-based piece, and it is transformative for both the partner and the students. And of course, it's all based on university resources that already exist. The only thing we've really added is the layer of support. Otherwise, the classes were on the books, the students were going to be enrolled, the faculty member was looking for a community project, and we've just come in and filled that need a little bit better. Recipe for success involves the buy-in from the city manager's office and above. We have worked with 3 municipalities so far, 2 in our pilot year and the 1 in our inaugural year. And we have had incredible support and strong relationships with each of those partners. I can't imagine it being anything but a lot of buy-in from the community partner, but that certainly does make a big difference. Deanna, for example, the deputy director, was eager to come downstairs this morning and talk with the students, and she was willing to jump in the truck with us to ride around and visit these places if we wanted her to. So there's a significant buy-in after this relationship starts to develop. There's, again, a lot of communication between city staff and council. We have point people in Alton that we speak with on a regular basis, and so that line of communication between them and the mayor is always open. And if there are any questions, they know that they just need to call, or we'll show up and answer those questions for them. Understanding of city's needs and students' capacity to deliver. And again, we've had really good experience working with partners who are just as driven to solve their community needs as they are to provide good learning experiences for our students. And oftentimes they talk about the rewarding factor of being able to offer that for students and to work with them on their coursework through the projects. City has that skin in the game I mentioned, and university support is key. We've had tremendous support from our provost office as well as our chancellor. Our chancellor is promoting high impact community engagement practices, and this fits perfectly with that goal. So the scale, just to give you an idea, we're too early in our project, in our initiative, to have our own numbers, but these are some numbers from the network to give you a sense of the kind of impact that we are talking about. We could have as many as 500 students in the community. We're not at that stage yet. We're only working with about 5 or 6 different projects. But once we build up our capacity and work out some of the growing pains, right? We could potentially have 500 students in the community, and that would work on 15 to 20 different projects, represent even a broader range of disciplines, bring in even more faculty, more courses in. Before you know it, we've got 40 to 60,000 hours of work that have been brought into that partners community. So we're also linking knowledge to practice. Again, too often students have learning experiences that are textbook driven, classroom based. And we have lots of literature to say that that is not the most effective learning experience out there. And so by engaging this kind of project, they are linking what they've learned in their first 3 or so years, because we are doing most of the senior and graduate courses, to, again, this real project that has real implications for their community partners. And as the video pointed out, cities oftentimes lack capacity to do these projects on their own. Either they don't have time, they don't have money, they don't have access to the technology, to the knowledge, to the journals. They don't have the political freedom, quite honestly, right? City folks can say some things, but students can say a lot more, right? And they can propose some rather outlandish, exciting, and politically threatening, if said by a municipality, right? Kind of thing. So capacity could be quite limited on the partner side, and that's one way that the university can partner and benefit both of us. We can broaden that capacity through bringing in these creative, innovative students. Cities lack that access to new knowledge. Again, we've got lots of that. Faculty that are highly trained, access to cutting edge research, journals, all that good stuff. Cities are risk averse, and we're looking to innovate, right? And to prompt creative ideas and to encourage our students to think beyond what's in the textbook and think, what does a sustainable community look like 20 years from now? And how can I engage in that currently? So after I've met with faculty, we've identified a course that looks like a good fit for a project on the partners list. We develop a scope of work where, again, the city partner participates in the development of that. I write the frame of it based on the conversations we've had. We run it through the faculty and the dean of the school that's in question. And we all decide that this is exactly what we're going to do in the course of a semester. These are the outcomes for this project, and this is the timeline and the budget is part of that scope of work. And so everyone understands what the expectations are from the beginning. And so that creates a nice partnership as well. There are no surprises unless they're additional extra good surprises, right? But there's no sort of disappointment that, oh, I thought we were going to get a report out of this, and instead we got a website or whatever it might be, right? So all that's cleared up and detailed in the scope of work. Purpose of project, desired outcomes. The things you see here are things that would include on that scope of work. We also include learning outcomes to reinforce the idea that this isn't, you're not working for a city, you're working within a project, and we have learning outcomes that we'd like for you to realize that we're driving here. learning outcomes primarily organized around things like civic engagement. So project matchmaking, again, this is generated by both the city and the university. It's iterative, so there is this ongoing process where I would pitch an idea and the city would say, well, you know, this isn't exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking more that this, right? And so I would go back and think, and so it's this iterative process where we identify the courses that are appropriate, we identify the outcomes that are appropriate, and we keep that communication open so that we can come to that agreement. We consider the sequential and concurrent courses, as well as standalone courses. So for example, in the CMIS, Computer Management Information Systems class, this semester there's a structured systems design class that is developing sort of the backstage pieces of a mobile app. They're trying to figure out what Alton wants, first of all, in a mobile app. They're trying to figure out what kind of data they want to collect through that mobile app. They're trying to think about what are the technicalities that are far beyond what I understand when it comes to apps, right? So they're going to do that background work, and they're going to hand that material off to a class in the spring that's an entirely different set of students, but those students are going to take the current semester's work and then actually develop the app. Because to develop a mobile app in one semester, quite a challenge, right? And so that's a way that we can think about these sequential courses. The same thing is true of something like the public relations class that's putting together the wrap-up event for us. They are designing it currently. They will create a budget. They'll create a pitch for the client, that's us. And then in the spring, they will carry that out and assess it at the end of the semester. So another sequential course. Yeah. And there was a lot of knocking on doors, right? Sort of a warning, if your university decides to do something like this, just think about the schedule of things. It was at the end of the spring semester when I really started knocking on doors, and you know what happens to a campus in the summer, and what happens to faculty's mindsets in the summer. I don't need to be on campus, I don't need to answer your email, I'll get to you maybe the day before school starts. And so there's a lot of that too. So the first week of classes was quite busy, but we pulled it off. So again, benefits to cities is increased capacity, expanded breadth of conversation. They do tend to take on riskier ideas. There's a lot of outreach too. We are looking at how can we engage the community more so in the project, so that it's not just students and the city working together, but if we can bring in community members who can give us feedback on where the app is going, for example, or what their ideas are about an idea from the marketing class to do the amazing race of Alton as a way to increase tourism, right? You can pitch that to community members and get some feedback on that. What do you think? Would you be involved? And go from there. So yeah, we're moving projects forward. One of the things we're actually right now recruiting for our next partner, and one of the questions that we'll ask when we sit down with potential partners is, what's collecting dust on the table behind you, right? What isn't getting the attention that it needs to get? Let's start with those projects so we can move them forward. Engaging marginalized groups can be, again, this is part of that outreach piece, to bring in members of the community who might not have had a chance to engage in meaningful ways with community leaders. There's opportunities for that to happen here now. We're thinking, for example, that in the spring we will host a pop-up public participation event, and we're thinking about how can we especially address some of the relationship troubles between marginalized communities and the leaders of that city. Most cities have them, right? And so how can we use something like that event to address those tensions and those relationship troubles? Material for future grant submissions. So a lot of the students may be collecting early data that the city can then use on future grant submissions. And I'll show you an example of a city that did quite well in that area. Again, lots of energy. Deanna and Greg, our point people in Alton, are energized by the conversations that they have with our students. And so it drives them to do more and to do better as well. They have an entry point to the university, so they know if they have any questions, even if I don't have the answers, they know to call me. And I can then help them find the correct answer, the correct people to talk to. And we're certainly developing well-trained students. One of the outcomes that we're seeing in projects across the country that are more developed than SIUEs is that students go into public service work, right? And then they think about their experiences in the EPIC model program, and they want to bring that EPIC model to their current positions. So it's nice to see that carry over as well. Benefits to students, there's lots of them. Real world experience, workforce development, again, this connection, meaningful connection engagement with the local government. Students begin to understand that they do have the potential to create change, which is really nice to see among young, creative, innovative folks. They start to understand that contrary to what they feel like sometimes, that they do have something to offer, and people are hungry for that contribution. Empowerment happens, certainly energy and focus, and then there's a lot of soft skill development that happens as well, right? Part of that professionalism aspect. The benefits to the public sector, we get those projects unstuck, get them moving, get some momentum behind them, get some early data so that our partners can move forward. Educating future clients, certainly, and many of the students weren't necessarily looking for sustainability education or sustainability learning, but they're getting it, right? And so with our public relations students who are doing the wrap-up event, we had a conversation about how SSCC is rooted in sustainability, building and creating stronger sustainable communities, and consequently we want a wrap-up event to reflect that. And so I'm talking with them about how to create zero waste events, for example. They're thinking about, in terms of decorating the event space, how to reuse and repurpose materials to accomplish that, rather than, you know, purchasing and trashing it. So it's a lot of fun, and that's an added benefit as a sustainability advocate. So some sample projects. I'm bringing, because again, we are in our first real year, I'm bringing some projects to share with you from other universities that have a longer track record, such as University of Oregon, where this EPIC model originated. And so in this case, where they had improving transportation choices, specifically bicycle transportation, and this was with the partner, the city of Redmond in Oregon. And you can see at the bottom here in the bolded letters, last year in Redmond, 15 of 17 student ideas were adopted by policy within 6 months. And so think about the students who then see their recommendations that actually get put into policy, and what that means in terms of their professional identity, and what it could mean in terms of where they see themselves in 10 or 20 years. The same project, again, here we have, in this case, we've generated community support and successful grant funding of a 2018 construction project as a consequence of the work that students did on this bicycle pedestrian traffic calming project. And then finally, in the same project, they also saw that the project generated voter support to purchase and protect 665 acres to design and construct 2 paths. Again, those are pretty significant outcomes that your typical student might not see come of their senior assignment projects, right? And I can't imagine what it would be to be a student who says, my senior assignment project is now that bike path, right? That's what came of it, instead of, you know, that A that is good too. But so SAGE is another project, or a program rather, based on the EPIC model out of San Diego State University. They have an example of some of the work they're doing, an economic security and sense of place project, wayfinding systems, so graphic design students, resulted in over $1 million in wayfinding grants for National City. Again, these are not typical outcomes for classroom projects. We're back to Oregon, apparently. I went back to Oregon. With an economic revitalization project. In this case, their outcome resulted in $800,000 plus in cost savings and revenue annually. Those are significant savings and revenue, right? Now part of the regional economic development strategy. So the impact, now these may be also sort of the poster projects, right? But again, when you think about if an entire class is working on a project, not all of them are going to result in this kind of savings or new bike paths put into place or other sort of extraordinary outcomes. But the hope would be that, again, some of those projects in that class would be stellar, would result in these sorts of outcomes, and others were, maybe the C-level work. Another example of engaging marginalized communities, or an example, in this case, the cultural mapping in Northeast Salem resulted in new participation on city boards. So more to engagement, that's really cool. Commissions and elected office and better relationships with city officials. Again, a great outcome. Now, our pilot year is quite a variation from the EPIC model. Typically, we would partner with one community partner, one municipality per year, but this was our pilot year, and we had interest from 2 communities, each with 1 project. So we thought, okay, we'll try this. And we were just starting, remember, because that's what the EPIC folks told us to do. Just go home, just start. We'll be there when you need us. So that's what we did. So we talked with Highland, and like a lot of small communities, Highland is dealing with an opioid problem. Now, the chief, Wilson, who is in that photo, he's in the background there, if you can see him, he's in his uniform. He has a personal connection. His daughter struggles with opioid addiction, and he has been open and forthright about that, so I feel okay about sharing that with you. So he had that personal investment as a father, as a community member, but also as the chief of the emergency management system in Highland. So we worked quite closely with him, along with our nursing faculty and the students in those classes. We had 3 nursing classes run through that community. They do 8-week blocks. And so the first block of students went in and they did a needs assessment to find out what's going on in Highland. They handed that off to the next 8-week group. And the second group took that information and developed a community resource directory and added some other components to it that spoke specifically to family members who might be living with a loved one dealing with opioid addiction or misuse. And then finally, the third group came in and worked more closely with the middle and high school students, because apparently, this is sort of a new discovery to me, middle and high school students don't get much in terms of drug education. And so the nursing class went to the school and worked to find out what they were doing, and then looked at other programs around the country to see what some of the model programs, the best practices for awareness and prevention education look like, and then created a curriculum then for the Highland school system to adopt. At that final presentation, we had Highland, the school, the superintendent there, we had guidance counselors, we had school social workers as well. And one of the school social workers had me by the elbow as soon as the presentation was over and said, "We want the curriculum. How soon can you get it to us?" So again, these have real world implications, and the members of the Highland community were very eager to do something around that problem. And then we also partnered with Godfrey. Our students in the applied health class, or community health and applied health, we're working on a senior assignment project where in the fall they developed a program, an educational outreach program to promote recycling in Godfrey. Because the city of Godfrey said that, like other small communities, each household has a contract with a trash provider, right? So you might have 5 or 6 different trucks coming through the community, which raises its own concerns. But there's also not a systematic recycling program in place. And so Godfrey wanted to address that. So the students created this campaign in the fall that they implemented and assessed in the spring, where they would actually go in the community on Wednesdays, and they would look for the blue bin. And why Wednesdays? Because that's when trash went out. And they'd look for the blue bins and catch the recycler of the week in the act of recycling, right? And they each had blue shirts. One of our students is holding the blue shirt in the picture to the right. They wore the blue shirts to be recognized in the community, and they had the green shirts that they would then give to the recycler of the week. They'd snap a photo, and up it would go on the Greener Godfrey Facebook page. Here's one of the recyclers of the week. His family preferred not to have their face on social media, so they put the shirt on the cup. But again, this was an opportunity for the students to work directly with the leaders in Godfrey to determine, among other things, how supportive residents were of a system-wide recycling program. So they did collect data on residents' attitudes, and they also offered a petition that residents could sign to let the city know that they would like to see a recycling program in place. Do they have a recycling program in place yet? Nope. But they have a better sense of where their community is and how to maybe address that need from here on out. And then finally, our current partner, the only one we have for our inaugural year, which is as it should be, is Alton, Illinois. And what you see here on the right are just a brief description of the projects, some of the projects that the students are working on. So as I mentioned already, one of the courses has already looked at the development of marketing or branding concept for the city. They thought about and worked directly with Greg Cathy, who's a director, he's the director of economic development, to understand what Alton wanted to be. And so they talked with him and learned about how Alton wants to really emphasize the high quality of life for their senior citizens. They were recently recognized by the AARP and by Forbes magazine, for that matter, as best places to retire. By the AARP, it's under $40,000 a year, and I think for Forbes I think it might have also had a low income kind of variable included. So, they're really excited to have those sort of marks, that they are good places for seniors to live and to live well. And they wanted to think about how they could market themselves so that other seniors could move into the community. At the same time, thinking about those youth sports opportunities. What are kids up to? How can we create the infrastructure so that we can host some of those tournaments and just attract new visitors as well? So, evaluation of best practices for business incubation and small business startup initiatives. We have a class in management. Christine Jordan's class is working on that project. She, in fact, was going to have them tour this facility to think about spaces. They'll also be in the Alton community looking at buildings and thinking about what buildings in Alton might make a nice incubation space. And they're divided into teams as well. So the whole class of about 35 is working on that question. Some of the students are working on tech startups, others are working on food startups, on art startups, and other types of startups. So that at the end of the project, Alton has some guidance on what kinds of support system they can offer for these various startups. Because they want to, again, build on the uniqueness of their current community, and that is they have a lot of really neat local community owned businesses. We've got a civil engineering class that will tackle the next 3 projects you see on the list. So they'll look at traffic calming recommendations, with the goal being that they could create a safer and more attractive walking and biking space in the neighborhoods. They'll look at transportation infrastructure planning for a particular corridor that is planned for expansion, so the students can think about how to do that with the lowest impact and how to really maximize the outcome with that low impact in mind. And then development of best practices for stormwater management, pretty typical kind of need for a municipal partner. So again, our civil engineering students will be looking at those questions in the spring. And then I've mentioned already the map app development to focus on small business and retail offerings unique to Alton. There's one on there that's, there's probably a couple on there in fact, because again, one of the surprises of the partnership is that faculty members from geography, for example, call me up and say, hey, I'm thinking about offering this unique kind of course and tailoring it to what Alton is doing. So we may have a couple of geography classes that pop up and tackle some kind of project that's either on this short list or part of a longer list. I'm currently thinking about doing an independent study with about 4 or 5 sociology students to do a survey of perceived and actual barriers to business development in Alton. Another project on their list that's not finalized in the scope of work just yet. But this is where we are, and these are the sorts of projects that we're looking at currently. And this is a photo from our announcement of the partnership in City Hall about a month ago, and a quote from the mayor that illustrates the excitement that the municipal partner has around the project. So they are excited. They're not really sure, right? We're early in the partnership. They're not really sure what they might get out of it, but they're excited. And there's the energy that I've talked about already that's enhanced as a result of these new folks coming into the university. So to finish up, and then I'll see if you have any questions or things you want to discuss further. This is a snapshot of, I think it's the most recent listing of all the programs that have adopted the EPIC model. All of us have some variation of our name, but you can see that we're across the country. We're from California, from the West Coast to the East Coast. We have Midwest states and we have Southern states. They really are across the board. And then you can see our international programs here at the bottom as well. And Nairobi and Zambia. That was the other one. There was a second one in Africa. And then finally, I will encourage you, if you're thinking about adopting this model for your university, to go to the EPIC conference. The next one is at the University of Southern Florida, which is not a bad place to be in April. And there are, the attendees. It's a pretty small conference, which makes it a nice conference when you're looking for hands-on support and maybe a little hand-holding at that. So about 120, they expect about that many this next conference. And you do get government leaders, university leaders, and then other organizations like East West Gateway, that kind of organization oftentimes will show up at the conference. And we learn how to succeed as a local government university partnership. We have time to connect others in the network. So at the conference, we'll have office hours. You can sign up ahead of time and go to office hours and get any particular questions asked and answered in that time. And then access to resources from local government university leaders who have already been through the process and have lots of wisdom to share with us. And so, there we go. Oops. So as our last note then, again, last year we were at Wisconsin in April. Not a bad place, but again, really looking forward to the South Florida University in April. And you can find more about the conference at the epicn.org website. So I'm not sure at all where we are on time, but I'm imagining we have some time for questions and discussion. So are any of you from other universities? Okay. Do you do anything like this?
We do a lot of service learning projects and a lot of practicums and internships.
Yeah.
All different programs, especially in our college with education and health professions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always, if there's a project that came to me versus creating one, like the example you were talking about, that'd be amazing. So trying to connect our health education students to sustainability, environmental benefits.
Yeah, we're hearing the same thing from faculty on our campus. That you bring us a project, our partner, we're all over that.
Yeah.
And very thankful and grateful for that. It's nice to knock on someone's door and they're happy to see you. Yeah. Other questions or comments? Yeah.
I'm curious, when you start kind of looking for the local government for the next year now?
We're doing it now. Yeah. Our letters went out 2 weeks ago or so. Yeah, and we're following up now, doing personal interactions. Because I'm glad you asked that actually, because the application process should not be scary. It shouldn't be done alone either. And so part of what we want to do, we sent the letters out and said, hey, we're looking for letters of intent. So we made the process a little easier. We want a letter of intent with just a snapshot of the projects you're thinking about so that we can then decide who we want to work closely with to develop a full-blown application. And so once we look at those letters, I will get even more involved in whoever's applied and whoever's strongest on that list and help them actually develop an application that fits better with what our university has to offer. Yeah, so we want to make it, so it's a little bit of a management nightmare almost too, right? Because we're in our current partnership. We still are wrapping up a few details from our previous partnership, delivering reports and things like that. And we're launching our look for the next partner. Yeah. So again, that project management database is going to be awesome. So no, and sort of, no, in that we want to be available to any community. But we did, especially as we're new, we wanted to stick kind of close to home so that we could get students in that community and back fairly easily and quickly. Oregon is working with some communities that are 200 plus miles away. They've been doing it a lot longer than we have, right? So they had that process down. And in fact, I just had a conversation with someone who asked the same question, were you willing to go to Randolph County? And I said, it depends on the projects. If these are projects that we can work maybe via Zoom or Skype, something like that, where we can have those sorts of interactions and maybe 1 or 2 field trips in the semester, we can do it. But if it requires this ongoing face-to-face, it's probably not going to work with us just yet. Yeah. We also thought about the question of, is it just Illinois or is it Missouri and Illinois? And again, we want to be open, but we are going to privilege Illinois applicants. We think that's smart politically.
And so how is your position, and maybe you covered this initially, I'm sorry if I missed it, how has your position within the university been modified to work with this? Because it seems like that would be one of the biggest challenges, I think, for the universities. It's, like you're saying, there's a lot of staff time involved with working with applications.
Yeah.
So how were you able to make that part of it?
So again, tremendous support from the provost office goes a long way. And so I have 2 course releases. I'm only teaching 1 grad class at 1 night a week. So it frees up all my daytime, or most of my daytime, to work on the project. We have a lot of internal funding that we're relying on right now. Because the 4 scopes of work, we have 4 official scopes of work with Alton, each are funded. But that's not enough to fully fund the project yet. So we rely a lot on internal support. And then we also have a team, a tremendous team. And Isho has been, actually I always say it wrong, has been a grad student. She's been in the project almost as long as I have. She was early on, and so she's developed a lot of knowledge around what we're doing, and is a public relations graduate student. And so she helps with that, newsletters, press releases, social media, those sorts of things. We now have Emily Scourin, who is our assistant project coordinator. Close enough? Who helps us with logistics, who helps with field trips, who just makes sure that we have breakfast treats at our kickoff event, and lots of other good things. Is helping with, most recently, field trip forms and whether or not we need them and what they need to look like, and logistics kinds of things. It's pretty much just us 3. Mary Etling's the Director of Educational Outreach, and so she certainly has a role in the project, although it's a little bit more limited, and it's basically, if we need her, we bring her in. And then I guess the last person would be Garish Gupchik, who is a recent dean of the pharmacy school. He's recently, for personal reasons, stepped down and is now in the provost office. And so he's doing a lot of the community outreach with us, working with potential partners for the next go-around. He has a lot of community networking that we can call on. So there's that. Yeah.
Can you maybe talk more about the sustainability aspect, and kind of, does that just impact the points that a project might get to decide, or just how that is integral to the EPIC program?
So the sustainability piece is part of the rubric that we use in assessing a project list. And I'll just be quite honest with you, we only had 1 applicant last year, so we didn't really use the rubric. But we have one that we would then rank those that are more in line with sustainability as higher.
But it's mostly just involved in the community,
Yeah.
without real world experience and sustainability.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't go as far as saying when you can.
Okay.
Let's just do it all the time, to the extent possible. Can we do it that way instead? Okay. Yeah. I don't want them to think they can get away with.
There should be some
Yeah,
level of
There's some level of
any
sustainability in
project.
all of it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
a specific component, even during the coursework, maybe talk about how can we make this
Yeah.
project sustainable. Okay.
And it might not come out in, like a test question, or it might not show up in the final product, but it's always part of the conversation that we have. And, why small businesses are important. We talk about sustainability around that with the map app, the mobile app people, because they want to really feature those local attractions, small businesses, things that make Alton unique.
But you said you only had one applicant, and do you have more this round, or?
Well, we haven't started receiving letters of intent yet, but I'll tell you by the response from the initial letters we just sent out, we're going to have more applicants.
Okay, so you contacted the different potential
Yeah.
places to work with.
Right. Yeah. And now that those letters are out, we are making phone calls to sit at face-to-face in city halls. Okay, you're interested? Let's talk about what an application needs to look like.
And how many projects are you going to be able to support next year, the next session?
We haven't talked about that question, but I'm going to throw out 10 to 15. Let's see if we can't make it to 10 to 15 next year. Yeah. We might get close to 10 this year, but that's the plan, is to scale it up. There's all sorts of other opportunities to scale this up too. You know, we're thinking about how could we involve our first year students? We're not going to put an entire project in their lap, but is there a way that we could bring them in maybe to support the senior level classes? Is there a way that we could bring in students of color that somehow get missed in courses like this too often? How can we do that? And so, yeah, the model is flexible enough that we're able to think outside of that now. Yeah, you know, with the pop-up public participation event, we planned that for the summer with summer classes, and we got the funding after the summer classes were over to do it. So I'm reaching out to student organizations, the Black Student Engineering Group, for example, Women in Engineering. You want to do this project as an extracurricular with some potential for course credit as an independent study? Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts?
Before you said that you think you're going to take on 15 projects this year, I was going to ask how are you going to make the effort at SIUE sustainable? It seems like you've already have the groundwork.
I think so. You know, again, not everyone on campus is thrilled about it, and that's okay. I'm not going to knock on their doors, or once I realize they're not thrilled, I'm going to thank you and move on. But the ones that are excited about it, I see a lot of potential to keep it going for many years and to come. Yeah. And I think the excitement is building as word of mouth spreads, and as we get the message out that this is what it can look like in Alton, for example. Other city leaders are looking around and saying, In fact, I still remember, I think it was a fellow from O'Fallon at the meeting that we had at East West Gateway who said, what if I put all this energy into an application and we don't get chosen? Which is part of the reason why we do the letters of intent now. You know, it's just a 1 or 2 page letter of intent, and then if you're ranked high, then we'll work on that full-blown application, because your odds are pretty good at being selected at that point. Yeah. And again, the provost has all sorts of ideas, many of which I'm sure I don't know yet, about how this program could be scaled up. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you much. If you have any questions, I've got cards, I've got handouts that summarize the program. You're more than welcome to take them, give us a call, let us know how we can help you